All right. Has it begun recording? Okay.
Yes.
All right. We will begin with welcome and prayer and greetings from Dr. Shonda Jones.
Good morning again, everyone. Welcome, as Dr. Matthews has said, to our second official board meeting. Friends, join me in prayer as we start this meeting. Loving God, we give you thanks this morning for all that you continue to do and for who you are. We give thanks. We give thanks, oh God, for all the advances that have occurred over the last 40 years of this particular pandemic. We pray for those who've been impacted by HIV and AIDS, and we pray that you will utilize us to continue to combat issues of stigma and shame as it relates to this disease. God, we pray that as we gather around multiple tables this morning, that you be with us, that you guide us, that you give us energy and strength for a new day along this journey. Be with us is our prayer. Amen.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jones, for that beautiful opening prayer. We want to give greetings to all of the new Faith Advisory Board members. And Dr. Jones, I believe you were going to kind of do the greetings with the new members.
Do you have their information in this deck at all?
I don't have it in the deck, but I can.
You may need to do that for us.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to stop sharing just so I can see everybody's face.
Yeah.
That way it's easier for me to introduce people. So we have Angela Vick Lewis, who is from Durham, North Carolina. Well, she's actually from Washington, D.C., but she lives
in. I'm not from Durham.
Yeah. Durham, North Carolina. A woman. Well, I'll let you introduce yourself.
I'm sorry, y'all. I'm trying to get this. Can you put the dog in the room? Hi, I'm sorry, I'm multitasking. My name is Angela Angel Vick Lewis. I am from Washington, D.C. I reside in Durham right now. I've been positive for the last 15 years, and upon doing that, I had promised God that I would come down to Durham to specifically come to NCCU and help educate the students, especially the new ones that were coming in, the importance of knowing their status and everything about HIV and AIDS. I've been doing a lot of advocacy out here. That's where I've met Dr. Matthews, and she's like my mentor. She took me underneath her wing. I've been doing so many projects with her, and I met her while she was at NCCU, the Cure Cab, and you know, everything she touches turns to gold. And she left me with the torch to go on to do that wonderful work at NCCU. UNC Cure Cab, I'm sorry. And I'm just going from there, and I'm glad to be on this board. This is a really important one, because when I first came to Durham, I CC'd all the churches and asked them, did they want to have a segment about HIV and AIDS? Crickets. No one called me, because I got tested at my church in DC, and that's where mine's all started from. So I figured, well, if churches in DC are doing it, they should be doing it everywhere. But lo and behold, it's not. So we're going to get that straight. We're going to start it South Line. We're going to take the train all around and get everybody, especially the pastors, on board, because they are leading their congregation. So if the pastor on board, I feel the congregation should be too. And it's time to stop the stigma.
Thank you,
You know,
Angel.
save lives.
Angel. So, okay, so we have we have
sorry, I'm
a
a
very
talker.
full agenda. Thank you for that. And just wanted just your name and just like one sentence about yourself for the remaining introductions. Kimberly Knight.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kimberly Knight. I reside here in Raleigh, North Carolina. I'm also a mentee of Dr. Matthews. I'm a clinical therapist by day, but I'm also a lifestyle blogger and founder of a newly nonprofit, Black Indians NC. Happy to be here.
Thank you. So I'm just going to go through Yolanda Jones. I know not everyone is new, but I'm just going to go through just so everybody can be introduced.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Yolanda Jones. I am the Vice President and COO of AIDS Services of Dallas. We provide residential housing and supportive services for people living with HIV and AIDS. And I'm also Dr. Jones's little sister. Hi.
Thank you. Pastor Will Francis.
Sure, I'm Pastor Will Francis, lead practitioner, Lives and Souls Missional Church, and founder and CEO of the Hub here in Atlanta, Georgia.
Thank you. Marvell Terry.
Good morning, Marvell Terry II. I'm the Senior Program Manager of the Southern HIV Impact Fund at AIDS United.
Thank you so much for joining. Ulysses Burley.
Hey everybody, Ulysses Burley, Chicago, Illinois, founder of UB The Cure, organization that operates at the intersection of faith, health, and human rights.
Thank you. And I remember we were connected the International AIDS Society meeting in, what was it, in Amsterdam? Yes. Jackie Hendricks.
Hello, everyone. I am Jackie Hendricks. I'm from Jackson, Tennessee, also the founder of Jackie Hendricks Ministries. I have been positive for 24 years, and I do a lot of speaking to nonprofits and ministries just about the importance of testing and living on purpose.
Thank you. Camarian Anderson.
Good morning, family. Carmarian B. Anderson Harvey, pronouns she, her, and hers. Alabama. I serve as the state director for the Human Rights Campaign. As well, I lead the National Trans Saints Ministry of the Fellowship of Affirming Ministry under Bishop Yvette Plunder.
Thank you so much.
Carmen, you left Dallas?
I did. I left in 2019, back in September.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
You didn't know that? Where'd you be?
I think I did. I just missed, Dallas is my hometown, so I just.
Yeah, I remember.
Dallas girl, okay.
Come visit me. I'm in Alabama. You'll love it.
Reverend Dr. Carolyn Davis.
Okay, sorry. Good morning. I'm Reverend Dr. Carolyn Davis. I'm based in Washington, D.C. I'm coming at you live from my phone because I managed to forget my computer when I left the house this morning. So that's how my week's going. I don't know how y'all are doing, but I hope it's better. I am a consultant based here. I work with a variety of organizations in sexual health and rights, typically from the federal advocacy level. Planned Parenthood, got connected through this group through some work with AIDS United and the Southern AIDS Coalition. I have a background both in United Methodist Ministry and academics. I serve as well on adjunct faculties at Wesley Theological Seminary and Loyola University Chicago. So very excited to be with y'all and just very excited to learn from each of you. So, thanks.
Sandy Bailey Gwynn.
Good morning, everybody. Sandy Bailey Gwynn, founder of Foundations for Living, where we bring strength to students, families, and communities in Georgia, Jefferson, Georgia. Thank you.
Thank you. Khadijah Abdullah.
Hey everybody, my name is Khadijah. I'm based in the DC area, and I'm the founder of Rahma, which means reaching all HIV positive Muslims in America, but we have kind of since expanded to work with diverse faith groups. So hello everybody, and thank you.
Thank you. Aquarius Gilmer.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Aquarius Gilmer. I'm the Associate Director of Alliance Relations within our Government Affairs and Policy function here at Gilead Sciences.
Thank you so much. Oh, and I'm an Aquarius, so I love your name. Carrie Goodman.
Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Kerry Goodman. I am a consultant working primarily with the Balm and Gilead, where we work with the faith community to address health disparities. And I also am the liaison for the United States Conference on AIDS.
Wonderful. All right. I'm going to share my screen again. All right. So we have quite a few exciting updates to provide to you all. And we also want to make sure we have time to get some feedback from you all on some of the materials and some of the work that we have been doing and are planning. So over the past few months, I guess it's about 6 months now, we've hired a full staff. So we're very excited to have Demi McCoy and Marcus Holly, who are both on the call. And so Demi McCoy is the creative program manager and also has a background in Divinity. And Marcus Holly is the program administrator and has been working in HIV field for past 10 years or so, doing a host of things around HIV prevention and et cetera. We've been doing a lot. So we want, the big announcement, and we're very excited, and it is to announce our funded partners. So this took, we had a very competitive process. We had over 40 applicants to all of the different funding opportunities, and we had 7 reviewers, 6 women and 1 man, one woman living with HIV, 1 pastor, and the rest were academics who represent kind of North Carolina, Texas, and other areas in the country who have been involved in HIV and faith work in the past, who did independent review of the applications and provided us with their scores and feedback. And then we met as a group and they gave us their top 3 choices in each category. And then we discussed those applicants and then did additional research on each of the organizations to come to this final group. We had to make decisions based on geographic diversity and representation of the different states across the 12 states across the South. And then also kind of thinking about the organization's capacity to do the work in multiple sectors. And so we're excited about this group. So we have the Interfaith Youth Corps, who's going to be working with 20 undergraduate university campuses across the South, prioritizing historically Black colleges and universities, and working with the faculty and students to establish leadership programs around integrating faith and HIV, and educating their student populations, either through coursework or through undergraduate organizations, campus organizations that can raise awareness about HIV. We're working with Vision Community Foundation and the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship of Mississippi to conduct trainings with faith leaders on how to integrate conversations about HIV and sexuality and love and acceptance and healing into their sermons, and as well as into their health ministries and other kind of faith community programming. In addition, we're working with the Transformative Grant awardees, the AME Publishing House, who will be working to develop training materials that will be published and then disseminated across the AME denomination, and the Christian Theological Seminary and the Proctor Conference are both going to be hosting conferences as well as training their faith leaders as well. You know, many of these are doing the same thing. They're training faith leaders within their networks, but taking probably some of them taking some slightly unique approaches to doing that within their networks. Metropolitan Charities as well as in Florida, and they're doing the same thing, as well as North Carolina Council of Churches has a network of churches across the state who will be working with to train faith leaders. And with the Faith Action and Congregational Grant awardees, we are excited about, you know, Compassionate Atlanta is working, both Compassionate Atlanta and the AFIA Center are going to be working with Black women and thinking about particular needs and messaging that should be addressed and can be addressed specific to the needs of Black women and their experiences with trauma and trying to address the trauma that they've experienced in churches and how to move forward with that. The Fayetteville Area Health Education Foundation, Foundations for Living, the Lenoir County Circle of Friends, and Trinity AME Church are all going to also be training their faith leaders in their respective communities and partnering with faith-based organizations to do that work. And then Reaching All HIV Positive Muslim Americans will be, and that's Khadijah's organization, will be working to develop some videos, some educational videos, interfaith focused videos that raise awareness about HIV. Relationship Unleashed will be developing a radio and TV programming, and Theo Lab will be developing 2 podcasts. They already have a pretty extensive network for their current podcast with about 20,000 listeners, and they're going to be adding 2 new podcasts that are focused on the experiences of Black women in the church, and also the second one will be on focusing on experiences of Black same-gender loving men and their experiences in the church. So excited about that.
Dr. Matthews, there's a particular question in the chat related to sharing the evaluation metrics for decision-making related to the grants. Do you have that available that you would be able to share with the advisory board?
Do you want the specific reviews, or you're asking about what the categories were for the evaluation?
So my question is really, as a funder, my question is really, what will this coordinating center use for these faith institutions as far as evaluation? What we often find is that faith institutions do good work, but there's no data. And so what does that data and evaluation look like?
Yes, that is a great question. So we have developed a pretty extensive evaluation plan for working with each one of these entities. We have evaluation at different levels. One is at the coordinating center level. We are providing, and I'll be talking about this in the next couple of slides, we are going to be providing our own series of training. The training will include topics around, you know, how to do analysis of the Bible and pulling in sacred texts and pulling, you know, examples from the sacred text to integrate into teaching, talking about Black sexuality and theology, talking about, and then also some more practical skills around, you know, the use of communication and trauma-informed care and faith-based trauma-informed care, and also how to, you know, use social media to develop and successfully implement campaigns. So with each one of those trainings, we have surveys, pre and post evaluation surveys that we will be taking. We will have our attendees complete. And then on the funded partner level, we also have a pretty extensive survey that is measuring the change in attitudes of their faith leaders and the kind of plans that they have to implement new programming that is specific to, addressing stigma around HIV, sexuality in their faith communities. And so we're asking them to complete that survey. And then we also going to be working with them to track their in-person and online engagement. So we have kind of templates for them to track, how many people are they communicating with and having meaningful involvement with, what are the demographics of those people who they're engaging with, and then also teaching them how to pull the analytics from their social media pages to be able to report on that as well.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews.
So I see there's some other questions in here. What are the funding levels for each category? The faith capacity building grant awardees, the top, the maximum amount for the award was $250,000. However, we funded each one of these organizations at less than that, based on our desire to fund additional organizations. So the maximum award was $200,000 for the faith capacity building grant awardees, and then the transformative grant was $100,000. And then the faith action, the max we funded was $25,000, but it ranged between $10,000 to $25,000 for the faith action and congregational grant awardees. All right. So we will have Demi present on the social media plan and strategy that we have developed for the center.
Awesome. Allison, do you have all my slide deck on there?
I do. I'll just advance it for you.
Okay, great. So yeah, as Allison said, I will be talking about our social media and social media strategy for the center so far. And again, my name is Demi McCoy, and I'm the creative program manager here at the center. You can move forward. So these are some of the objectives we have for our social media, and this is definitely more high level. These objectives are not public facing, but just internal for us to know as far as the content we're putting out and the things we want to hit on. So one, we want to decolonize some of the faith and sexuality frameworks that negatively impact the HIV narrative and people living with HIV and AIDS. Two, storytelling is a big one of our objectives, to tell refreshing and enlightening narratives of those who are working in HIV, and again, people living with HIV and AIDS. And then resourcing as a third resource in the community. And then informing our audiences of the work we're doing, the work our partners are doing, and informing them of how they can get involved. And then lastly, and this is sort of the culmination of all of those objectives, but to transform the story, to transform the narrative and the action steps, and as it relates to the to HIV ministry and faith work. So you can move to the next slide. So this is sort of a hashtag that we're floating as sort of a main umbrella that would be public facing for our social media strategy. It's transforming the story. And it's a play on, if you've seen some of the social media from Gilead, especially related to their transformative grant partners, they have hashtag Transform the South. We're thinking for the Faith Coordinating Center, transforming the story would hit really well, given that it's a lot of storytelling and narratives that have further stigmatized those with people living with HIV and AIDS, and those who aren't living with it, just certain stories that have negatively impacted this work. And so if we can transform the story, we can transform the work. And then here we have our goals. I won't get into the weeds on the goals, but engagement, reach, recognition, and influence. And again, thinking about metrics and things that we can measure when we pull our social media analytics. And so these are tangible ways that we can measure how our social media is functioning and doing this work for us. And so we have started our social media channels. We haven't really posted any content besides profile pictures and banners, but if you want to follow us, you can follow us at Faith Compass WFU on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And we've been in conversation with our Director of Communications here at the Divinity School in regards to eventually starting a YouTube channel that is likely, but it has not been started yet. But you can be on the lookout for that as we develop and produce more content. And so this is one of the big projects we've been working on as we've been thinking about the trainings for our grant partners, our funded partners. And so we've actually started a social media toolkit that is currently in development. And the idea is that this is high-level communications rollout that gives our partners different assets that they can use so that one, there's a certain layout that transfers back to the center. But two, it sort of lightens the load for them in thinking about, social media engagement and their capacity. And so with this toolkit, we have a lot that's put in the toolkit. You could go to the next slide. So there's carousels, there's infographics, there's rollout graphics, event flyers, templates, a guide to social media analytics, a guide to social media management, and then of course a navigation guide for how to use the toolkit. And so these are some of the examples. This is one of our rollout examples for our funded partners who've been awarded. These are graphics that they can put on their social media that they don't have to recreate for themselves. They can just plug and play. And you can move on to the next one. And then these are some examples of the carousels and sort of infographics. And you can see here, this is 4 ways to destigmatize HIV in faith communities. So again, we're thinking of this of Instagram, you put this on and people can swipe through, people can share this. So it's really getting the information out there. Can move to the next one. This is another example. This is 9 ways faith leaders can transform the story on HIV. And again, the same concept, putting bite-sized information out there that our partners can post, that we can post to transform this narrative via the vehicle of social media. And so this is a bit on the management. So the social media toolkit lives in Google Drive. And as Dr. Matthews mentioned earlier, we will be, as a part of our training for our funded partners, walking them through all of this. We have a dedicated session just for social media to talk about the analytics, to talk about how to use the toolkit to the best of their ability. As far as graphic design, we've partnered with a local North Carolina Black-owned brand agency, and they've been working on a lot of our graphics, primarily for the toolkit. And then I also do some of our in-house graphics as well. And then as far as the social media channels, I will primarily be managing those, but Dr. Matthews, as well as our Director of Communications here at the Divinity School, will also have access to manage those channels. And
great, thank you. So I just wanted to highlight that we've also did a, at the beginning of the launch of the center, we did a media tour that Gilead set up, and Dr. Jones was featured in an Inspire magazine, and I was interviewed with Afro which is an online media blog, online blog that focuses on raising awareness around African-American news stories. And we also did a radio tour where we did interviews with DJs across the country to raise awareness around National Women and Girls HIV Awareness Day. So in addition to that, we had the HIV and Faith Summit, where we had a panel discussion that Dr. Jones led. And for that summit, it was actually managed by GLAD Media, and they had over 1,000 registrations and trained people, 219 people, on how to tell stories using media, doing pitches to newspapers and magazines, and also using social media and how to do storytelling over social media. We had 465 people who actually joined our specific panel, and over 6,000 people who were engaged on Facebook. So engaged meaning they liked the page, they liked the post, they commented on it. And then over 40,000, about 41,000 people who saw the post or saw the panel, at least on their feed at some point on their timeline. We also have been hosting listening sessions to just kind of get a better sense of what, get a sense of the pulse of what's going on in the South regarding HIV and faith, and what's needed, what are the priorities that people in different states have around moving the agenda forward around HIV and faith. So we met with Black trans women with Powerhouse Global, and we also met with some community leaders and faith leaders in Mississippi and Louisiana, and are planning some additional sessions. So if you all would like to host a session, or would like to suggest people who you think would be good to join a session, so that we can learn and listen and just kind of help shape our programming, we welcome that. So these are some of the quotes that have come out of the listening sessions, and we're using these listening sessions to help shape all of the material. So, a lot of that social media toolkit, many of the quotes and many of the suggestions that came from those listening sessions went into the social media materials, and the suggestions on the training that, the training sessions that we are going to be hosting with our funded partners and their networks also came from feedback from the listening sessions. So these are some that I think were really powerful, and important. They suggested keeping in touch with people even after they've gotten into care, and then thinking about what creates stigma. It's rejection, and what kills rejection is love. Live in your spirit and truth. And there were many other kind of quotes that came out saying, I'm a powerful woman of spirit, push the Black church to know us in the fullness of who we are. I'm ready to do some root work. That's probably my favorite quote. God was with me and helped me to get through trauma and rejection, and family is the core of faith. And another one that really, I don't have it on this slide, but really stood out to me was a Black trans woman who talked about, she finally was able to kind of feel accepted and loved when the pastor that she was of the church she was attending told her that God loved her and that she deserved to be loved no matter what. And so that, to me, those kinds of stories are coming out of the listening sessions and are really powerful, and I think that they can help us be able to do some work that hopefully we'll be able to speak to communities across the South. So we've also been working with Gilead to produce two videos. One of them is, I think, still in the very early stages, this music video. So we've been trying to identify a musical kind of we're trying to identify a big name person, to like make sure that this video really is powerful and people pay attention. So we haven't gotten an update on whether we've secured these people or not. So I don't want to like give you names that we don't know for sure if they've been confirmed or not. But the idea is that we would work with the musicians, or the musicians would produce a song and a video that, deliver the message of love and faith and kind of love and acceptance. And then, so this is a very rough cut of the next upcoming Power Within Reach video. And we worked with faith leaders, 3 faith leaders. We actually did a listening session with them first to kind of identify themes that should be covered in the video. And then they were invited to join the filming in Atlanta. And then and we worked with a Black queer film producer who produced this film. So the idea is that this is supposed to be a 1 minute or 2 short video that we're able to use to kind of help open conversation and start conversation around HIV and faith.
Hey, you. Yes, you. And you, and you. Have you seen the path? It's a path that's always been there. It is a path forged for us by our ancestors, and now we must bravely walk it ourselves. It is a path that starts with justice and focuses on just us.
You are connected to the divine. And the divine is connected to you. Yeah, you. The divine created you, communicates with you, loves you.
It's time to give ourselves permission to evolve and allow our faith to do its work as a radical liberator. Is it time? It's time. It's well past time. It's time to change the conversation around HIV.
We must embrace our brothers and sisters living with HIV in our communities and in our places of worship. Put our faith into action. Because it's not a conversation about them. It's a conversation about us. Transformation, freedom, and liberation can only happen when they're led by truth. Our truth.
So let's chart out a new path that others can follow. Path grounded in our collective legacy of Black joy. Let's start holistically healing, spiritually, emotionally, physically, geographically. We are created by the divine. Now we can co-create the world we want, the world we deserve. Each day is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to change. And change will be realized when we fully see each other. You are a part of us, and we are a part of you.
So let's help each other. Let's learn from each other. Let's continue to build our own institutions and create our own solutions.
Because we all have that power, and it is well within our reach.
I'm gonna pause there and see, do you all have any reactions or thoughts about the video?
This is Kimberly Knight. I thought the video was well put together. I can see where you mean of interjecting an influential person or someone like that into it, but I definitely think that it flowed well, and I like the transitions that were in the video. I think that really showed a large landscape of people living in the South.
I see that Reverend Naomi is everything. I love it.
I appreciated the cultural references, the what it appeared to be a HBCU band. The colors looked like FAMU almost, but I appreciated that the Black Eyed Peas, the barbecue, or those moments, the church setting. So I appreciated it, and I think it did what it needed to do.
Wonderful. So we did submit, so that's the rough cut. So we did submit some changes. Some of the changes we suggested were to make a stronger connection between, because the opening statement talked about HIV in general, but to make a stronger connection between faith and HIV and like telling people what the video was actually about. And then we suggested to add in the names of the pastors who were in the video and what the locations were of them, to say like, these are not actors, these are real faith leaders. And we suggested to add in more scenes of Muslim prayer, because it was like at the very end, but we wanted to kind of communicate that this was an interfaith approach. So those were some suggested changes that we made. And like I was saying, the other video, there's a video that's coming, it's a music video. And so that one will have a big name person that we don't know yet. We're waiting to confirm that. Yeah. Yes. Great. I'm glad you all like it. All right. Okay. So next, just kind of share with you the training schedule. So we're gonna make this look prettier, but just sharing with you that we are gonna start working with our grantees in July, and we're gonna have an orientation and then kind of do a background and update on what's happening in HIV/AIDS in the South. I think most grantees have some basic knowledge about HIV, but there's been a lot of advancements, a lot of research, a lot of treatment options and things like that I think a lot of people would benefit from learning from. And then we will go, like we mentioned, we'll do the training on how to use social media and do analytics. And we'll have a session on love, faith, and acceptance of transgender women. We will also be doing a session on establishing interfaith partnerships and collaborating with academic institutions. And this, so many of these trainings, some of them are closed, some of them are open to the public, and then some of them are open to the grantee networks if you register. So they're not all closed. Some of these, we definitely see the benefit of a larger audience being able to join these sessions and learn from them. So one of them that is going to be live streamed on Facebook and YouTube will be a virtual panel on Black sexuality, the church, and living faith, and talking about Black and queer theology. And then we are going to have, in December, we'll have a session on searching for funding and writing strong grant proposals. And then, so we do plan to do some things for World AIDS Day and also for HIV Cure Research Day. So Kimberly Knight, who is a new person who joined the advisory council, and I have co-founded HIV Cure Research Day. And also, I just want to acknowledge that we have HIV and Faith Awareness Day that was co-founded by Khadijah Abdullah. So we would like to amplify the work that you're doing around that day as well in August. And we're going to be doing a panel for December 14th, HIV Cure Research Day. And so we've confirmed HIV cure scientists from UNC Chapel Hill, as well as from Gilead, who will be speaking on the latest in cure research. And also we are working to confirm Heidi Broadbent, who was interviewed on Oprah when she was a child living with HIV, and working to confirm additional panel discussants. And then we'll also dive deeper into womanist theologies of healing through African heritage spiritual traditions, and then thinking about, Dean Jonathan Walton is the dean of the Divinity School here at Wake Forest, and thinking about the lens of love, Black love and HIV, and his work focusing on love as a common theme. So we also have a Learning It Together cohort. We're going to be sending out the notice of acceptance to the cohort and launching our activities in August. And so that'll be a cohort of executive leaders of nonprofit organizations who want to learn more and expand their work around HIV and faith. And so we'll have sessions on organizational change and theory of change, integrating faith and community organizing, challenging stigma, building partnerships and sustainability on state and national levels, using crowdsourcing as a community engagement tool. Crowdsourcing is this idea of getting community-based feedback and ideas to create campaigns and other programming. And then creating financial sustainability for their program, for their organizations, and integrating trauma-informed faith-based practices into their structure. So they'll be meeting quarterly, and it's a self-paced learning. So we'll have materials, reading materials for them to access and complete written assignments online. And then we'll meet quarterly to have in-person conversation and workshops with trainers. And then we are, like I mentioned, planning to amplify National Faith HIV/AIDS Awareness Day, World AIDS Day, and HIV Cure Research Day. That kind of concludes, but just want to get some thoughts from you all on any additional questions or thoughts on things that you think we should be working on or think about adjusting.
I would be particularly interested to get feedback related to the training schedule that you all saw. You saw some of the topics and speakers on the screen. Are there, in the first year and a half of us doing the trainings, do you see some obvious gaps, points of celebration for us, including certain topics, things like that?
Could you go back to that schedule, please?
Yes, 1 second. Well, this is the orientation and the HIV update. Oh, here's some. It may be easier if I'd stop making it in presentation mode so you can see.
Does any of the training include HIV positive youth and young adults as well, that 13 to 24 age group?
So we I want to say in March. So I just went from August to February, but in March and April, we were planning some additional, we're going to do sessions all the way through May of next year. I just didn't show those because they weren't confirmed yet, but we are, yes, I think in March, we were planning to actually have some HIV positive youth or youth living with HIV to talk about their experiences.
Do we include in February the National Black HIV/AIDS Awareness Day for that schedule?
So this was the plan, was for us to have Dean Walton talk about the lens of love, Black love,
Okay.
and HIV, and I just didn't have the actual title of the awareness day on there, but
Okay.
yeah, that was for February 8th.
That's what I figured since it was so close to the date. Yeah.
This is Marvell. I did not see, and I'm of course heard that you said there are more training sessions that's not included on here. I just wanted to flag kind of mental health and dismantling trauma that happen in faith institutions. And also I do not see a session on faith institutions doing meaningful partnerships, primarily with minorities serving educational facilities such as HBCUs. I don't see faith institutions partnering with community-based organizations. So I think that that is definitely a needed session.
Thank you. So the session in October, and so I'll make note that we want to make sure that we cover that in this session, but we were thinking about covering that in the establishing interfaith partnerships and collaborating with academic institutions. But we can add in some emphasis on HBCUs in particular and community-based organizations. Definitely add that in. And then the trauma, the kind of mental health and trauma-informed topics, that was one of them that I don't have shown here, but that one we were planning for April.
And Allison, is that particular one, I mean, is it related, or would the content be related to sort of church hurt that many people in our community have experienced?
Yeah, so we're going to be working with Kind Consulting, Kendra Frazier, who has a background in training, doing training, trauma-informed care, trauma-informed, faith-based mental health training with faith communities. So we're going to be doing an intentional training on that.
I just put in chat the initial meeting that was held in Atlanta. There was someone that did a great presentation on church hurt and religious trauma. I think that was probably one of the best that I had heard up to that point. So I don't remember her name. I think Chanel.
Oh, I think that was Kendra, actually.
It was? Okay, yeah, I didn't remember the name. That was a phenomenal presentation.
Yeah, great.
These are good. Thank you. Keep them coming. If you all think of anything else after the meeting, please let us know. We can see how we can incorporate it. So I think the other that I wanted to get feedback on was the social media. So I'm going to just dive into this a little bit closer so you can see it. Do you feel like these are good tips, or do you think we need to add additional tips? What do you think? Can you see this also? See if I can
say, do you think maybe we should kind of like bold the white a little bit? Because I mean, maybe because it's like all on one side, but it's a little bit hard to read. So I'm just wondering if it'll be the same like on social media as well.
What about this campaign conceptually? Not just a visual, but the conceptualization of, destigmatizing HIV.
I think it's a great idea.
And I was just thinking in reference to tying this a little bit more with the hashtag, like just on the slide that has one, like transformed language, and just use more of that transformation. Because I've always said that we have to become less transactional and more transformational in this work. So I'm loving the hashtag that we're using, but maybe incorporate that some in the carousel slides as well, that transform keeps hitting people in their face.
Additionally, number 1 says reshape language. I'm wondering, is there plans to do a post on social media, like showing different words to use?
It's 11 o'clock.
Maybe
Yeah, that's a good one.
Very, very needed.
So I'm gonna move to the next one, see if you all have any other. This is 9 ways faith leaders can transform the story.
I'm sorry, I couldn't get off mute fast enough. On the previous slide, I think it was number 3, engaging community and faith leaders. I see that as 2 different, in my opinion. I know we like to group community and then faith leaders, but those are 2 huge, big responsibilities of engagement. Just wanted to kind of point that out, my observation, but so far, so good.
Yeah. So would you suggest that we just mention engaging ways to equip faith leaders with the knowledge?
I will be intentional in offering the community their own space in recognition of us connecting with them or engaging with them, and how faith leaders, because a lot of times the faith leaders may, we may get more community and faith leaders. If we're being intentional about getting the attention of faith leaders, they need their own category.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I agree, because they also need their own safe space to ask questions not in front of the community because of the lack of knowledge they may not have as it relates to HIV.
Well, and maybe that's a tip or something that we add is creating safe space to have these conversations.
Mm-hmm. So there might be, we can probably make 5 or 6 ways instead of the 4, and that way we're breaking that one out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Carrie. I was gonna say that I think it would be great to kind of flesh a few of those out a little bit. And I think pushing it to 6 might be a good option. And then on the one that says reshape language, that's a whole lot to read. Are we able to cut some of that down? Or perhaps consider doing a separate post, as Khadijah mentioned, around the reshaping language. It may be good to have a dedicated post created specifically for the reshaping language and some of the language that can be, some of the words or whatever that can be used.
Yeah. I think we could have a whole post on reshaping language because there's a lot of language that I don't think that people are aware that they're using that is stigmatizing. Okay.
Real quick before we move from there, and just something that I just thought of that might be good. It may be a good opportunity for the coordinating center to develop maybe some kind of, not trying to add more work to anyone, but maybe it could be a discussion, a brief 30-minute discussion on reshaping language. That might be a good opportunity to, be a little bit more active on social media.
Like a social media conversation?
Oh, yeah.
Say that again?
Did you mean like maybe facilitating a social media conversation?
Absolutely, yeah.
This is Kimberly. I was going to piggyback off of what Carrie just said. I agree. Like from my personal circumstance, I lost my spouse to complications of AIDS. And so for me, one of the concerns was with his story was the language from his faith leader. He respected very well and was a faith leader from his hometown. The issue came in where the faith leader made decisions that were out of his scope of practice to tell him medically not to take treatment or to advance himself to see doctors or professionals about his diagnosis, to basically keep it a secret. And that was a test of his faith if he did so. And so I think it would be interesting to have a question or two in that social media conversation about knowing the boundaries of practice when it comes to being a faith leader. Especially since I'm a clinical therapist now, when that scope of mental health, physical health, knowing when the referral process needs to happen.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a good one that we could add in is how faith leaders can refer and like what's the
Yeah.
tools and tips on doing that referral?
I absolutely love what Kimberly just said, and it goes back to what we were just talking about with slide 3, faith leaders having that space to say the things that they're, when to make that. Because I had conversations with several faith leaders that don't have a clue about HIV besides praying it out of you. That's not going to work, but thank you, So I think that's a brilliant idea to have that separate space and then talk about those things and what's in your scope as a faith leader, talking to your congregation that is living with HIV and AIDS, and just communicating about being tested.
Yeah. And on that same line, and I think Carrie also, just to kind of dive in more, the reshaping language I think is important. I think this category also helps stigmatize of them labeling sexual orientation and gender expression as a cause, or using that in their bad hermeneutics of them saying that, at least I'm touching on it, but the language that they use certainly tokenize and targets those in those congregations of their sexual orientation and gender expression. And I was waiting to the next slide, and I thank you, Marvell. Marvell, that's my brother for real. I'm literally trying to find out how all of this is going to empower the Southern individuals in the trans community as well, because that is kind of a very challenging religion and faith for those communities. Religion and faith in itself, or showing up to read this or watching a webinar, could be very traumatizing. So just want to be mindful that they and myself is able to see ourselves in these wonderful campaigns that are being created that will at least allow them to show up and be brave and take a look and maybe be encouraged.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, this is Carolyn. I appreciate what Kamarian said, and I would add, just looking at this slide, I wonder if there's a way, the video captured such a sense of joy, right? Sort of the joy that comes with being a faith leader who is welcoming their congregation into wellness in all its forms, who is helping to sort of cut the binding ways that we talk about these things that are hurt and are harmful, and instead replace that with a real celebration of including everyone in our community and doing that in a way that we care for one another's bodies as well as their spirits. So I wonder, in a slide like this, if there's a way to find frame, add something about celebration, right? Like celebrating the community as a space that is bridging for public health, or celebrating the opportunity to come together and encourage one another in wellness. Something, I don't know exactly what, but I'm like sort of, a lot of these sort of, they're right on the edge of joy and we're just like not quite there. And I wonder if there's a way to add a little bit, inject a little bit of that joy. And at the same time, even going back to the previous slides, I wonder as well about crafting some language about bringing faith leaders into an understanding of their role as bridges within the larger community when it comes to public health, this being particularly an important message in rural communities. So just a couple thoughts and feedback there.
This is great. Thank you.
One of the things that I was thinking about as well, while we're looking at this carousel example, I don't know how exactly this would fit, but offering some level of support, like to family members of those with HIV, like even in the language and in the support, because although those living with HIV and AIDS need the support, sometimes those that are caretakers, family, friends. So maybe having something where we can connect them to some type of group, or, just, maybe some daily inspiration or something like that to help those who are help pushing those who are living with HIV and AIDS. I think that's probably one thing. My daughter didn't have that. And other than just, the encouragement and prayer, I had a very supportive family, but I recognize that a lot of people don't. So that may be something that we just kind of look to as well.
So what messages would you say to a family member that that maybe we could add to a social media campaign?
Something like, they're just giving them strength. I mean, it could be something as general as, we can make it, we can do it together. Just something letting them know that they're not alone as well.
Mhm.
And I definitely agree with Jackie there, because when I disclose, I'm disclosing for my family as well, and they need that additional support on how to respond to their friends, coworkers, different things of that nature.
Mhm.
And I do have a question about slide 7 when we get finished with this conversation.
Sure. And Sandy, I saw you had unmuted yourself.
No, I had been thinking about the people who support the families. There was nothing there to say interviewing people that have AIDS and HIV, but what about their family and friends? So I kept my mouth shut until I just kept my mouth shut, but I'm glad somebody else brought it out, because it's like when you marry the family, you marry the husband, but you got to marry the husband, the auntie, and the uncle.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my
Marianne?
thoughts.
Camaria?
I'm sorry, I barely can hear you. I'm sorry. I just wanted to lift up, I see nothing directly as it relates of using the word, or unless we're just trying to be cautious, sex.
Mm.
I don't want to tend to say that we're running from that, but they need to, in my opinion, need to see that that's one of the biggest challenges is sex and premarital sex, or sex after you get married, or fornication, or fun on occasion. But again, the way they teach that as it relates also to HIV is continue to perpetuate of the stigma that we actually see from pulpits. I would like to see in one of these that we use the word sex to actually have that courageous dialogue that's really needed when we're speaking about HIV and other transmitted STIs.
I love it. Yes.
This is Kimberly. I like number 3 about removing the HIV from conversations about sin, because I think a lot of times it's so much conversation of only HIV being related to sin in that sense of because of sexuality and things like that. And I think there's so many other things that if you're going to go down that dark road of saying these types of negative language, then the same would go for someone who may be suffering from diabetes or hypertension, and people can call them, oh, you're gluttonous, or you're overextending your diet, or you're morbidly obese, or these are the types of hate language that I think that we definitely need to tackle. And in that caption for that one specifically, I think we need to be really specific about talking about the removal of this type of language when it comes to that, for being towards people, because it goes so deeply down a rabbit hole when it comes to even other pre-existing conditions that can happen.
What I'm also hearing from you all is that some of these posts could have a whole other additional, so also to let you know that these are just examples, like we definitely are planning on adding in more and more. So this is helpful for us, because then we can dive deeper, like maybe this is just the surface level, and then we can dive deeper into some of these topics in additional posts. Ulysses?
I think Marvell had his hand up first, or have you already spoken, sir?
I apologize.
No worries. Okay. I think something that needs to be reflected here is how faith leaders frame healing in the context of theology, and what healing looks like for people living with an incurable disease. And so I think one of these notes needs to be that, through the preach word, through sacred texts, faith leaders need to kind of recontextualize what complete healing is, especially if we talk about from a Christian perspective where, Jesus healed people completely. I was blind, I couldn't see, and voila, now I can. Well, what does that look like for somebody living with a disease where there is no cure? And so healing looks like having access to antiretroviral treatment and being undetectable, right? But if all you're hearing from the pulpit is complete healing is cure, then that might not be accessible or tangible for people living with HIV under that theology. And so helping faith leaders to just be able to re-theologize healing in the context of what that looks like for people living with HIV.
Marvell?
Yes, it's a couple stylistic things for me as my first observation. And so on number 2, you all separated HIV and AIDS, but in number 6, you went back to the traditional method of HIV and AIDS. So just wanted to call that piece out. If we want to separate it in 2, we should separate it on the slide number 6. For slide number 8, I think we need to put stigma in there somewhere, because what is an HIV campaign without acknowledging stigma? And so for me, when I see an HIV campaign, is that HIV 101, or are we trying to dismantle ways that we do stigma? And then number 9, I would not change the wording per se. I would just put it in my footnotes that we really need to centralize HIV and those living with HIV as whole people within our proclamation, sermons, and speeches.
Yeah, so being specific about how you introduce HIV in that proclamation. Yeah. Pastor Will Francis.
I was sort of going to say the same thing in reference to 7. We're saying in another slide, centralize HIV, but in 7, we're separating HIV and AIDS ministry from health and wellness ministry. So if we're going to centralize it, it just needs to be as common as blood pressure, diabetes, etc. So maybe with something like that, incorporate HIV/AIDS ministry in your existing health and wellness ministry, etc. Because I think there's an intersectionality with it all.
Yeah. And Pastor Francis, was this the specific slide that you said you wanted to look at, or you said something about slide 7? Was that this one? Okay.
Yeah, because what winds up happening is the health fair is in the gym, and then HIV testing is on the North Campus, and you got to take a bus to get to the North Campus. So it needs to be all in the gym, et cetera, and it'd be, more routine in reference to the screenings that are provided.
Let's try to see if there's anything else. This is great. We definitely will make these adjustments in the slides, in the social media, and we'll use your feedback to also create additional material that that goes into the language and additional. We were going to have to go back and look at the recording and I'm sure that Marcus and Demi have been taking notes. So we'll definitely.
Can I ask Demi a question, perhaps, based on some of the feedback? It sounds like, looking at number 1, we're really with all of them, that there's an opportunity for there to be an unfolding message that comes about, right? So I could imagine even with number 4, listening to people living with HIV and AIDS, that we create under this particular headliner, a short video series of actually people living with HIV that people are listening to. Is that what you're imagining?
Yes. I think the beauty of social media is that we can keep posting content, right? So the idea is, and this was a great example, right? As people engage with the content, more content will arrive from that and be expounded upon. So, I think it's good to hear that we can expand, continually upon these things and dive in even deeper, because it means the conversation is not going to be stagnant in terms of what we're putting out, what we're, giving to our grantees. So, there's a lot of opportunity for follow-up, whether that's video or more graphics, infographics, carousels, and that sort of thing, photos,
Yeah.
And I think to add to that, this is just one part of the toolkit and the strategy, right? So we have these this is just static, like you just post it and people read it, and we're trying to make it shareable so people can share it on their social media. But we also want to, you know, do short videos, and we'll probably be calling on you all, if you're open to it, to be in some of those videos and talking about your kind of ministries and the work that you do. We'll be highlighting people living with HIV. We'll be highlighting leaders in the faith and HIV space. We will be doing, you know, Instagram lives and conversations, you know, and working on those video series that, you know, the first one that we showed you. We will also be hosting a podcast. That one is still in the works. So that's why I didn't include it in here, because we're still developing the strategy for it. But the podcast, we would love to highlight stories, you know, and talk about centralizing and like kind of centralizing, you know, conversations around HIV in faith spaces, talking about stories of like the divinity within, you know, transgender kind of identity, you know, thinking about two-spirit and like just kind of different, I guess, cultural and theological understandings of these topics. So definitely more opportunity for conversation. Yes, I see.
Dr. Matthews, can I ask you just a quick question? So out of all of that, those opportunities, will there, personally, I can foresee there will come a time where each of these 1 through 4, maybe 1 through 6, can be dedicated as professional development for those faith leaders. And I'm only thinking about my backwoods of Alabama that may not have, may not be on their socials at the right time when these are being promoted, but can be advertised to show up to get their questions answered. And we're still living in a virtual world where they can still hide behind the camera and still learn.
Yes, definitely. And we're going to be recording and posting them to live, you know, so even if they miss the IG live, we'll be recording it and posting it on YouTube so that people can access it later.
Thank you.
Ulysses.
Thank you. I wanted to add that the funding that was awarded to reaching all HIV positive Muslims in America, RAHMA, RAHMA serves as a fiscal agent, but the funding was submitted by the United States HIV and AIDS Faith Coalition. And with that funding, we're going to produce just what we're talking about here, videos of people living with HIV in the South so that they can share their stories about how their experience intersects with their faith in the South. And then we're also going to include faith leaders as well. And so I'm wondering if those videos can be used for this purpose as well. The idea is to have them recorded by the middle of July so that they can be edited and available for National Faith HIV/AIDS Awareness Day, which is the last Sunday in August. And we've done this in partnership with the Southern AIDS Coalition since Southern HIV/AIDS Awareness Day is about a week before National Faith HIV/AIDS Awareness Day. So together we're going to try to roll out these video segments across both social media platforms for SAC and the United States Conference on HIV and AIDS. And I think we would absolutely be available or open to sharing those videos on Gilead Compass platforms as well.
Yes, and that's part of the plan too, is, you know, we're funding these organizations like yours that will be doing this work and will be amplifying your work as well. So, you know, the podcast that's going to be produced, the videos that you all are producing, the training materials that will be published, you know, we'll be working with each one of the funded organizations to kind of create a library of online resources as well. Pastor Francis.
No, I didn't have anything to say.
Oh, your hand was okay. No problem. Any other last thoughts? I think we could end our meeting a little early if we don't have anything else.
I had could we go back to the facilitators? I wanted to review that one moment.
The facilitator.
The agenda or the topics that you all will be
For the
discussing.
training.
You want me to keep going?
So I wanted, and this is just an observation, and we can do with it what we need to do with it. I want to be intentional about ensuring that we have facilitators from the South. And so I see a couple sessions where I do not see individuals with a lived experience in the South. And so I just want to be very mindful of that, that the Southern experience is very unique to multiple identities. And I want to be mindful that we make sure that we couple a facilitator that does not live in the South with a person that lives in the South. And so more specifically, if we can go back, this love, faith, and acceptance of transgender women, I want to be mindful that we couple this facilitator with a Black trans woman that lives in the South.
Okay.
Where does Marissa live?
In Indiana.
Indiana.
Point well taken. I think the majority of, other than this one, I think the majority are in the South.
And can you go back to the queer theology? I'm not sure what the direction is outside of just reading queer theology. I'm always challenged when we use the word queer theology because we leave out times liberation theology, trans theology, and we try to sum it up all in queer theology. So for those moderators, just so we can be more inclusive because they try to accomplish so much in queer theology and it just doesn't reach all of the communities who do not represent queer theology, who needs healing on these type of conversations.
Yes. So we've been meeting with the panelists to have conversation about what they would be discussing and what the themes we want to highlight in that panel discussion. Let me, I'm gonna exit out of this really quickly.
Okay. And just a footnote, I personally, for empowerment reasons, using maybe queer theology, and this is just food for thought, but perhaps radical theology, just so it'd be a little bit more robust and people can come and expect to see what is radical and what they're not doing to become radical versus the queer theology that's listed.
Yeah, I think that's definitely an easy change. Some of these titles are not, they can be changed. So we can definitely change it. Let's see here. I was gonna pull up just some of the initial conversation notes that we've had with panel discussants, just to highlight.
And while you're doing that, can I just ask, Marianne, are you thinking that if we included the language queer theology, that it would be a barrier for some people even showing up for that particular opportunity?
Yes.
I got it.
Thank
People
you.
that we would want in the room won't show up in the room because it's that queer stuff that they're not interested in talking about. I got it.
And it also associate, just because it's an HIV platform, that we're centering the queer community in conjunction with HIV. And if we're trying to dismantle the stigma that's attached to that, I would just probably find a more radical word. And that's why I just said radical theology or liberation theology or some sort that's going to pique interest in not put attention on the queer community.
Yeah,
I think actually one of our panelists made that point too. So yeah, we definitely can change that. I saw somebody raise their hand.
Dr. Allison, that particular panel, my recommendation again would be to add the experience of a Black trans individual. If we're going to have 4 panelists, I think we should add one more because all identities are represented except for the Black trans experience on that panel.
Okay. Any other thoughts? This is so good. Thank you so much. All right. So just I pulled up the notes. So we brainstormed some themes to cover in the panel, talking about Bible as a blessing and a barrier, around HIV, gender identity, and sexuality. We want to talk about the joys and pains about being Black, queer, and faithful. Some folks who start churches, we want to talk about the experiences of people who start churches versus those who work in mainline and traditional Black denominations, and having those conversations around sexuality, and HIV. And healing narratives and biblical texts as blessings and barriers, thinking about how do we traditionally think about cure. So Marvell, some of your comments we had already talked about covering in that panel. What does that look like for people living with HIV, seeing them as healed and whole? What themes can we connect from the episode on Pose, and the conversation around Lil Nas X and the work that the song that he put out, and kind of the pain around, being in religious experiences, what kind of videos. And so what we want to come out of that panel, as well as with any of the workshops, is what kind of videos, readings, websites, resources that we can gain from the facilitators that we can share with the people who are attending the workshops, and so that it's not just stopping at that conversation. So kind of thinking about creating a live syllabus, crowdsourcing materials, resources, tips, lists of questions that are important to consider and to ask, and making it a radically inclusive and anti-racist syllabus. So that's just some of the kind of thoughts that we have around that panel, and ways that we want to continue to grow this body of work. So this is just the, and also, we can also think about not just this year, right? Like this is a 3-year funded program. So we can think about what do we want to see for next year? Like this is creating the foundation, right? But then how do we build on that foundation for next year? So I imagine that these workshops are the kind of initial conversations and building up the resources, creating libraries, creating social media content, creating this content, but then what's the next step after that, And also thinking strategically about how we find organizations that can move us to that next step. All right. Well, we really appreciate your time this morning. This was such good conversation, such rich conversation. We will definitely take all of your feedback and incorporate it. And we probably will be calling on some of you in the meantime to, help us with some of this content, and maybe, participating on some panels, and so we really appreciate, again, all of your commitment to this work, and we look forward to working with you in the next couple of months. And
I'm sorry, Allison, will we be able to get a copy of this since it's being recorded? Or
yes,
is it being
we'll
recorded?
send you a copy. Yes.
Okay, great.
And Marcus, do you know when the next meeting is?
Hold on, I'm taking a look. I think it's in October.
I have September 30th.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. September 30th is our next meeting. It'll be the same time from 10
To
10
12.
Eastern, 12, 9 to 11 Central Time.
Yeah.
All right. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you.